everybody, and welcome back to Witchin' and Winin'. I'm your resident witch, Miranda.
And I'm Crystal, your resident wino.
Tonight's episode is one that honestly gets under your skin the more you think about it, because we're talking about reincarnation. The idea that death may not actually be the end, and that some part of us could continue on in another life.
And this rabbit hole gets wild, y'all. We're talking about children who remember names, places, and deaths they should never know about. People claiming memories from ancient civilizations, and even stories about humans supposedly returning as animals.
Some of these stories are emotional, and some, well, actually all are fascinating. Because whether these memories are paranormal, psychological, spiritual, or something science just hasn't figured out yet, there are thousands of cases documented around the world.
I'm trying to read what I'm saying, but my cat is in the way.
Cat butt.
Stephanie, who were you in a past life? There you go.
My cat got fixed. He had only one testicle.
Why did he have one testicle?
I don't know. The other one just wasn't there. They had to look for it, but they just didn't have it.
That's so weird. Anyway. Tonight we're diving into some of the strangest ones we could find, including cases investigated by researchers from the University of Virginia, stories connected to Buddhism and karma, and accounts that blur the line between human and animal consciousness.
So grab your coffee,
grab your wine,
and maybe try not to stare too hard at your pet tonight, just in case they used to be somebody you know.
Well, my cat is right in my face.
And my cat is obsessed with me. I don't need, is this an ex-boyfriend? I don't know, because he just won't leave in another, I don't know. This cat just won't leave me alone. And I love him for it, but also it's really annoying at night. He even follows me into the bathroom. He opens the freaking door.
Every time I go to the bathroom, my cat and one of my cats and one of my dogs will go in and play with each other around my feet.
Why are they like this? All right, well, anyway, let's get into this. But, okay, before we get into the stories tonight, like the accounts and the memories and the strange moments that make people question everything they thought they knew about life, we need to start with one big question. And that is, what is reincarnation? Well, at its core, reincarnation is the belief that some part of a person, whether that's the soul, consciousness, spirit, or energy, it survives the physical death and is eventually reborn into another life. Different cultures and religions have explored the idea for thousands of years. But even outside the spiritual traditions, the concept has managed to work its way into modern conversations in a huge way. A surprising number of people believe there might be something to it. Studies have shown that roughly 1/3 of Americans believe reincarnation could be real. What makes that even more interesting is that this includes a significant number of Christians, around 29%. So despite reincarnation not being part of traditional mainstream Christian doctrine, those people are still believing it. But the really wild part, you may ask, about 10% of Americans claim they can actually remember details from what they believe were previous lives. Not just vague feelings or deja vu. Some people describe specific places, names, deaths, relationships, or memories that they insist never came from their current lifetime. And whether you believe it or not, people are fascinated by it. Part of that fascination comes from the hope wrapped inside the idea itself. Because reincarnation suggests something that's comforting, let's be real, that maybe this life isn't the end of our story, maybe mistakes aren't final, maybe growth doesn't have to stop at death. Religious studies professor Stafford Betty from California State University, Bakersfield, once explained that reincarnation carries the promise of another chance, another opportunity to learn, to improve, or become something better. According to him, it paints the universe in a far more merciful light than the idea of eternal punishment or everlasting hell. And honestly, you can understand why that idea resonates with people. The thought that life could continue instead of simply ending is powerful. But despite all the public fascination, most scientists remain extremely skeptical. Many researchers argue that reincarnation cases are often fueled by fraud, exaggeration, coincidence, or false memories. Some point out that stories of supposed past lives frequently involve dramatic claims like having been royalty, famous historical figures, or people connected to major historical events. Psychologist Christopher C. French from Goldsmiths University of London has described reincarnation memories as psychologically interesting, but he believes it's far more likely that these experiences are examples of false memory rather than genuine recollections from another life.
Which I call bullshit, because then how are people getting like phone numbers and addresses and family members' names and all of these very specific details about people and places they've never been to?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Oh, there is a group of researchers that refuse to completely dismiss the possibility. For more than 45 years, investigators at the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia have quietly collected and studied cases involving people, especially children, who claim to remember past lives. Their work focuses on interviewing witnesses, documenting memories, and investigating whether any of the details can actually be verified. And if even a fraction of these cases turn out to be legitimate, it raises a terrifying and fascinating possibility. What if death isn't really the end at all?
All right, let's get into our first story. Stories about reincarnation mostly lived in whispers. They were the kinds of stories people shared quietly, late at night, over coffee tables, in church parking lots, or hidden deep inside old books about the unexplained. Most people either brushed them off completely or secretly wondered if there might be something to them. But every once in a while, a case surfaces that becomes so detailed, so specific, and so difficult to explain away that even skeptics stop and pay attention. And one of the most famous modern cases began with a little boy from Oklahoma who couldn't sleep. His name was Ryan Hammond. Back in 2009, when Ryan was only around 4 years old, something started happening that terrified his family. Night after night, he woke up screaming from violent nightmares. According to his mother, Cindy, the episodes became constant. He would cry uncontrollably in the middle of the night, and nobody could figure out why. Then, one evening, everything changed. Ryan looked at his mother and told her he had a secret, something he needed to say, but something she couldn't tell anyone, not even his father. And then he quietly said, "I think I used to be somebody else." Cindy said the words completely blindsided her. She didn't even know how to respond, so she just listened. At first, Ryan's memories came in fragments, but before long, stories became incredibly detailed. He told his mother that in another life he had lived in Hollywood, California. He described a large, luxurious home with a swimming pool. He talked about wealth, parties, and a glamorous lifestyle that sounded impossibly far removed from the life of a small child growing up in Oklahoma. He also claimed he once had 3 sons. Boys he said were not biologically his, but that he had given them his name. And the stories didn't stop. According to Ryan, he had once danced on Broadway during the 1920s before eventually moving to Hollywood during the height of its golden age. He spoke about drinking with actress Rita Hayworth, acting alongside Mae West, and nearly getting into trouble for flirting with Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn.
I love that.
I mean, how would a 4-year-old know about all these actresses?
That's a good point.
Yeah. Did you hear my cat?
Yeah, she agreed. Mm-hmm.
She keeps getting right in my face like she knows what we're talking about. She's like, "Do you remember me?"
Yeah, she's like, you're talking about me. Like, tell my story too.
He's like, "I knew you before I knew you again." Okay. So, to his mom, Cindy, this all was really unsettling. Not only were the stories unusually vivid, but Ryan's entire behavior seemed to shift when he talked about them. His vocabulary changed. His mannerisms changed. And more than anything else, he became desperate to go home, even though the place he described was somewhere he had never been. At first, Cindy tried to find rational explanations. But as the months passed and the stories continued night after night, she started researching cases involving children who claimed to remember past lives. One suggestion she encountered was that showing children photographs or books connected to the places they described could sometimes help calm them. So she checked out books about old Hollywood. And inside one of those books, they found the photograph that changed everything. It was a publicity image from the 1932 film Night After Night, a movie notable for being Mae West's film debut. The image showed several actors standing together. Ryan stared at the page, pointed directly at one man in the photo, and calmly said, "That's me." The man Ryan identified was not a major celebrity. In fact, almost nobody recognized him. His name was Marty Martin, a former Hollywood extra and talent agent who had died decades earlier. That moment became the turning point for Ryan's family, because now there was something tangible to investigate. Ryan's mother began contacting experts, hoping someone could explain what was happening. Eventually, the case reached Dr. Jim Tucker, a child psychiatrist connected to the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia. Dr. Tucker had spent years studying children who claimed to remember previous lives. Over several decades, researchers at the university had documented more than 2,500 cases involving similar claims. Most involved very young children describing ordinary people from the past. But Ryan's case stood out immediately because of how specific his memories were, and because he had identified a real person from an obscure photograph. Ryan eventually recorded more than 200 separate statements about Marty Martin's life. That's a lot of statements for a little 4-year-old to be making about somebody's life that, he's never heard of before. Investigators were only able to verify some of them, but the number they confirmed was still astonishing. 55 statements matched historical records. And you got to think, those other statements could have been things that were impossible to confirm or, disprove. So 55 statements that they were able to match historically is amazing. Ryan described Marty living in New York while performing on stage, later working through an agency, traveling to Paris, living in a large house with a swimming pool, and having a daughter. And then came one of the strangest moments in the entire investigation. At one point, Ryan reportedly said he didn't understand why God would let someone die at 61 years old, only to come back again as a baby. But when researchers located Marty Martin's death certificate, it listed his age at death as 59. At first, it looked like Ryan had been wrong, until Dr. Tucker investigated further. After interviewing Marty Martin's daughter and reviewing census records along with marriage documents, researchers discovered that the death certificate itself appeared to contain the error. Multiple official records supported the claim that Marty Martin had actually been 61 years old when he died.
Dang.
Exactly as Ryan had stated. That's the detail that rattles me the most. Even his daughter said he was 61.
Yeah, that is crazy.
So not the glamorous Hollywood memories, not the parties, not even the old photograph. It's the idea that a child somehow knew a tiny mistake hidden inside decades-old paperwork that almost nobody could have noticed. Even Dr. Tucker admitted that cases like Ryan's forced difficult questions. According to him, the evidence suggests that some children may carry memories, emotions, and knowledge from lives that existed before their own. He explained that if reincarnation is real, it could mean that some part of the human mind, or perhaps the soul itself, survives death, and continues on into another life. But maybe the saddest part of Ryan's story came from what he said he learned from Martin's life. When asked what kind of person Marty had been, Ryan answered with one word: greedy. He said Marty spent too much time working and not enough time with his family, that he focused on success instead of the people around him. And somehow, that almost makes the story feel more human, because if reincarnation is real, maybe the point isn't fame or power. Maybe the point is learning how to live better next time around.
Yeah, I mean, there's a large community out there. I mean, I see it all over social media and stuff, who talk about like reincarnation, your multiple lives. You're supposed to keep learning and growing as a soul through every incarnation of your soul. And then ultimately you're supposed to reach some level of like vibration or knowledge or whatever. But in order to do that, you have to like learn and experience all these lessons.
When you were growing up in the coven, did you guys have any thoughts on reincarnation?
Oh, yeah. So we had the idea that because our minds are so powerful, we could choose what we want in the afterlife. We can choose to be reincarnated. We can choose to go to any version of heaven to be with other people as we want. So there was that sort of freedom. And it's like, hey, if you feel like you want to be reincarnated, come back. Yeah, by all means, that will happen. But if you choose to just live in paradise, it's your choice.
Okay, so paradise, not necessarily what Christians would call heaven.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Heaven, paradise, the Elysian fields,
Yeah. Did you guys believe in a hell?
More like an underworld, not so much that there's somebody that was going to punish you per se, like the devil or something.
Yeah.
But the underworld was just another place. It wasn't necessarily bad or evil. It was just a stopping point for souls when they died.
Right. A lot of these stories are coming from the University of Virginia's research. Like they have a book that you can, with all of their research in it that involves past lives. I mean, like tons of cases of past lives and near-death experiences and all of these things that you could download online for free.
Mm-hmm.
It's super interesting. And in there, we're not talking about them on here. I'm going to save them for another show. But there were some kids that had remembered being a god in life, like one of a deity, and then some that had remembered being in hell and tortured by monsters. And I think there was even one that remembered being a monster in hell.
Wow.
Anyways, they're super fascinating.
No, that sounds really fast. Like this whole thing is fascinating because I even personally have a few stories of reincarnation myself. But anyway, so this next story is about a little girl who remembered drowning. So one of the best known researchers into child past life memories is Carol Bowman, an author who spent years collecting accounts from parents whose children said things that simply did not make sense. According to Bowman, some of the most compelling cases didn't involve dramatic claims of being kings, queens, or famous historical figures. Instead, they often came from very young children describing death in strangely calm and matter-of-fact ways. One of those children was a little girl named Leah. Bowman first heard about Leah through the girl's mother, Tio, during a casual gathering at a friend's house. Tio described her daughter as cheerful, intelligent, and unusually observant. Nothing about Leah seemed troubled or disturbed. In fact, what struck her mother most was how normal she acted while talking about something so horrifying. The experience began when Leah was only 2 years old. One day, she and her mother were driving together when they crossed a bridge with shiny aluminum guardrails overlooking a steep ravine. As Leah looked out the back window from her car seat, she suddenly became excited and pointed towards the bridge. Then, in a completely calm voice, she said, "Mommy, this is just like where I died." Tio was so startled that she immediately pulled the car over. Trying to stay calm, she asked Leah what she meant. The little girl explained that she had once been inside a car that went off a bridge and crashed into the water. She said she had not been wearing a seatbelt, and when the car went into the water, she fell out. Then Leah began describing detail that deeply unsettled her mother. She touched the back of her head and explained that she had been lying on rocks underwater. She tilted her head back and described seeing the shiny bridge above through the water while bubbles floated upward towards the surface. And according to Tio, none of it should have been possible for a 2-year-old to know.
No, any of that, like what it's like to be underwater, and then even just the seatbelt part, like these kids, they don't even see you wearing a seatbelt. They're turned backwards.
Yeah, rear facing
the back of the car. It's just crazy too.
Leah had never been underwater before. She didn't swim. She wouldn't even put her face beneath the water in the bathtub. Her mother also said that she had never watched television at that age, meaning she had never seen scenes of underwater accidents or drowning. Yet somehow, she vividly described what it looked like beneath the surface of the water as someone died. Even stranger, Leah never changed the story. For nearly a year and a half, she repeated the same exact details over and over again with complete consistency. There were no dramatic additions, no contradictions, and no signs that she was inventing fantasy stories for attention. But the detail that stayed with her parents the most had nothing to do with the bridge itself. It was Leah's obsession with seatbelts. Even before she could properly speak, she became extremely anxious about making sure her seatbelt was fastened correctly every single time she rode in the car. As soon as she was old enough to talk clearly, she also began demanding that everybody else in the vehicle wear theirs too. To her family, it no longer felt like a random childhood habit. It felt like the lingering fear of someone who remembered exactly what had happened the last time they rode in a car without one. And honestly, that's one of the things that make these stories feel so eerie to me. It's not just children saying strange things. It's like when those memories seem to spill over into current behaviors and current fears and instincts that just don't quite fit their current life. It's almost as if some fragment of like another experience followed them there. Well, I mean, it's not almost as if, like it is as if another experience followed them there.
Yeah. Like some adult that some people think that their adult phobias are due to past life that are bleeding into their new life. And some people even say like, you might not like certain places or places you've never even been to. You might have like a certain negative opinion about that place for some unknown reason. Like you don't really know why, you just have a negative feeling about that place. You don't have any interest in going there. There might be foods that you have an aversion to for some reason, not necessarily because you think they taste bad, but just a reason that you don't know why, you can't explain.
Yeah. Or even those people that seem to have like affinity for certain things, like never having picked up an instrument before. They might pick up a violin and then all of a sudden are like, virtuoso after very little. It's like a memory, like muscle memory was sparked within them.
Yeah, there's actually a guy that was like that. He never, practiced or anything. He just immediately became incredible pianist, and people believe that he was reincarnated from like a famous pianist in the old days. I'm thinking maybe my brother's reincarnated from some musician, because even at a young age, he could pick up any instrument. I mean, absolutely anything. Things you've never even heard of before. He can pick up any instrument, and within minutes, he could play whatever you ask him.
Yeah, that's a talent for sure.
Oh, he's incredible.
Side note, but not really a side note. My daughter, when she was 4, actually told me that she was reincarnated. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before. Kind of like described a memory rather than like a death or anything, just a memory and a name and, like the setting of the area. And then
I tried to look up that name.
No, I mean, yes, I think I typed it into Google whenever she first told me, but
like
yeah, not like a deep dive. Yeah. And then also when she was 2.5, we had taken a trip to the Grand Canyon. And whenever we went to the edge to look over at the canyon and, just enjoy the view, she just like calmly, randomly was like, "Hey, Mom, did you know that this used to be filled with water?" Or, I mean, it wasn't super articulate like that, because she was 2.5, but it was like, this had a lot of water and there were mermaids. It was like that. And I was just like, what? She's like, yeah, they're mermaids. Yeah, they're mermaids here. Not now. Mermaids. But yeah, because again, like at 2.5, she wasn't super articulate. But I'm just like,
I
so
know
random.
kids have big imaginations, but at that age, that's not something that a 2-year-old just comes up with out of the blue.
Right? Yeah.
Had
so I was
you
just
even,
like
seen anything with mermaid? Well, I guess maybe like Ariel.
Yeah, but not really. She wasn't a very big TV watcher. Like, we didn't really, it's not like we were anti-screen time, but she just preferred to do other things, like art and stuff. And then the idea that, like, oh yeah, the Grand Canyon had a bunch of water in it. Like, it did. That's why it's a freaking, I mean, obviously also, or, other sorts of reasons why the Grand Canyon is the shape that it is. Right. But one of them is, like, water erosion.
But and, like, for her to have
known that.
About it, too.
Yeah. But anyway, I digress.
Okay. So, one of the most controversial reincarnation stories ever told involves a woman from Sweden named Barbara Carllin. Barbara was born in 1954 into a Christian family, but according to her, some of her earliest memories didn't feel like they belonged to her own life at all. From the time she was a child, Barbara claimed she experienced vivid dreams connected to another identity, one she later came to believe was Anne Frank. But, at first, because she's so young, she didn't realize that was the person she was dreaming about. Anyways, long before she understood who Anne Frank was, historically, Barbara reportedly carried an intense fear of uniforms. She also spoke about strange dreams and memories that her family couldn't explain. But because she was still young, nobody around her initially connected those experiences to anything unusual. That changed once she started school and eventually learned about Anne Frank's story. According to Barbara, that was the moment everything clicked into place. But she also quickly realized how unbelievable her claims would sound to other people, so she largely kept them to herself. Then came the experience that convinced her family something truly strange was happening. When Barbara was still a child, her parents took a trip through Europe and visited the Anne Frank house. But before they had even got there, as they were approaching just the area, Barbara recognized the streets, and she guided her parents directly toward the building. Once inside, her reaction became emotional almost immediately. She noticed that the original steps that were there, that she expected to see, were gone. And as she moved through the house, she reportedly became more and more distressed. But the strangest moment came when she entered Anne Frank's bedroom. Barbara claimed she could still see, visually see, the movie star pictures and newspaper clippings that Anne Frank had once attached to the walls. According to her, she recognized them instantly because she remembered placing them there herself. Then, just as she began describing the images to her mother, the pictures suddenly disappeared before her eyes. So she realized they weren't actually there. Confused, Barbara's mother later questioned the staff members at the museum and learned the images had actually been temporarily removed because tourists had been stealing them as souvenirs. So the museum had planned to return them later inside protective frames. So they did exist. For Barbara, the experience became overwhelming. She reportedly ran from the building in tears. As she grew older, Barbara continued researching the memories and eventually wrote publicly about her experiences. According to reports, the amount of historical detail she recalled impressed some people connected to the Anne Frank Foundation. Now, obviously, cases like this are incredibly controversial. Skeptics argue that memory is fragile, suggestible, and deeply influenced by emotion and exposure to historical stories. They believe experiences like Barbara's can be explained psychologically rather than spiritually, even though her knowing those exact details about everything doesn't make sense to me that it would just be psychological. Anyways, but stories like hers continue to fascinate people for one reason, because every once in a while, someone describes details they seemingly should not know. and the line between coincidence, memory, and something far stranger starts to blur.
I heard about that one several times, like over the years, and I've watched so many videos on her and everything, so that's just cool.
I'd never heard of her before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Also, I was weirdly obsessed with the Holocaust when I was younger, and mind you, way too young to be obsessed with the Holocaust. I am not gonna lie. I look back. Oh God, no. Maybe, I don't know, but it was. I even went at a young age to the Museum of Tolerance in LA, and that one was super duper heartbreaking. And I think I was 6th grade going into seventh grade, I want to say, right before junior high started. And so before, I had been totally obsessed with the Holocaust before that. But even then, it was hard to find information about that because back then the internet wasn't what it was today, even though we had a good amount of internet. And then every so often, my obsession with the Holocaust revitalizes, I guess. And, I just want to spread the word of equality and exactly. I don't know. It's like one of those really passionate subjects where why were they treated, and all obviously now with what's going on in our country, there's a lot of comparisons that have sparked me into the rabbit hole, and that has been brought anyway again, lots of tangents, but yeah,
that could be you could have had some experience with it of some kind.
Maybe
made you passionate in this life.
I know you're
one of the people that hid people.
Maybe, actually. I know my great-grandma came from Germany, so my family is from there. So, at least one side of my family, anyway.
And there are a lot of stories of people coming back reincarnated as new members of the same family.
Mm-hmm. A lot of reincarnation stories involve children remembering people. But every once in a while, a case surfaces where the child doesn't just remember a person. They remember an entire world. That's what happened to a girl named Anna. According to her family, Anna was around 9 years old when she first began talking about vivid memories that didn't seem connected to her current life. But the strange thing wasn't just what she described. It was the way she described it. Her parents said Anna spoke as though she wasn't imagining a fantasy world or retelling a story from a book, but instead, she sounded like someone recalling memories of a place she had actually lived. She described an ancient civilization surrounded by a dry, desert-like environment where there were caves, simple homes, and communities of people living together inside stone structures. She talked about daily routines and ordinary tasks as though she could still see herself moving through them. The details became increasingly specific. Anna described moments of transition in the community, life inside the caves, and eventually, disaster. One day, she told her family about a devastating earthquake that struck the place where she once lived. According to Anna, the ground split open, sand collapsed inward, roofs caved in, and then people fled in panic. Her parents later said the way she recounted the event felt less like storytelling and more like witnessing trauma all over again. Anna also began drawing the things she remembered. Some of the drawings looked like maps or layouts of a city she claimed to have known. Others depicted scenes of destruction and violence connected to the ancient place that she described. Then the case took an even stranger turn. One morning, Anna reportedly woke up suddenly and told her family she had remembered an entire language. She immediately asked for paper and began writing symbols and characters on index cards while translating some of them into English. According to her parents, the writing resembled some ancient script. At first, her family had no idea what to make of it. But eventually, while researching online, they discovered something that shocked them. Archaeologists had uncovered an ancient submerged city called Heraklion. The city had reportedly been discovered underwater in the year 2000 and dated back as far as the 12th century BC. Researchers believed Heraklion had once been a major port city before a catastrophic series of earthquakes caused it to sink beneath the water. And according to Anna's family, the descriptions matched her memories in disturbing ways. The earthquakes, the collapsing land, the island-like shape of the city. When they viewed digital reconstructions of Heraklion, Anna's family reportedly realized that the unusual shape of the island looked remarkably similar to drawings Anna had already made before learning about the city. For Anna's parents, that became the moment they started seriously considering whether their daughter might actually be remembering our life. Anna herself later spoke publicly about the experience, saying that from a young age she had vivid memories of living in an ancient town and performing daily activities there. She said discovering Heraklion felt like finding confirmation that the place she remembered had truly existed. But for Anna, the experience wasn't entirely easy. She admitted she often felt uncomfortable talking to other children about the memories because she worried they wouldn't understand. According to her family, the experience could feel isolating because it wasn't something most kids talked openly about. Eventually, Anna's family traveled to Nevada to attend a gathering called Earth Angels, a support group for families whose children reported similar experiences. And honestly, I think that might be one of the saddest parts of these stories. Not the memories themselves, but that loneliness that the kids are feeling. Imagine being 9 years old and carrying what feels like fragments of another lifetime inside your head. Memories of disaster, places, languages, and emotions nobody around you can explain. At the Earth Angels gathering, Anna finally met other children who claimed to remember past lives too. According to her family, she immediately seemed more relaxed, welcomed, and understood. For the first time, she wasn't the only kid in the room carrying memories that didn't seem to belong to this life.
I think that's important because whether she actually has memories or it just feels that real to her, even if it's not actually, reincarnation, I feel like it's still something that's weighing on her, and it's still good to have that support group that you feel understood.
Yeah. There was a time, I still feel it, but now I have confirmation, I guess. I had always felt like, I was like, man, I must have been a man in my last life. I know I must have been. And then not only that, like my mom that's in this life, I just had this crazy feeling. I was like, I bet you I was her parent in the last life. I bet you, And then, I don't know, like a couple of years later, I got a past life reading and I was told that I was a man, my past life, a music teacher, which again made sense because I'm very musically adept as well. Kind of like your brother where I can pick up an instrument and kind of know the basics of how to play it just by fiddling it.
I don't even think I knew that about you.
You didn't?
No, and we've been friends for many years.
Yeah, I play so many instruments.
No way.
Like a lot, yeah.
Why are we not starting a band?
I don't know. But yeah, so that I was a music teacher, and I'm like, okay, that made sense. And then this person told me what I thought was, I didn't even tell her that, I think I was my mother's parent in a past life. I didn't tell her anything. She was like, and I'm, your mom in this life, she was your daughter in the last life. And I was like, I freaking knew it. I knew it, So it was like another little tidbit from one of my stories.
Your mom, you're like, I raced this.
Like you're grounded, go to your room.
You did it to yourself.
I would ground myself, I'm not going to lie. When I was a kid,
no way.
I did. One time I got a C in math class when I was in 8th grade, and I was so disappointed. I tried really hard to get a good grade. Like I didn't get a C because I just wasn't doing anything. I got a C because I kept on failing every test, but I was doing all the work, Yeah. So I was averaging a C because I fail the test and A's on the work. Anyway. And so when I got the report card, I was like, Mom, I'm so sorry. I won't play any games for a week, and I'll just try to work on my math skills because I just want to get better. And I know you're disappointed. And my mom, she didn't even say anything. She's like, okay.
You have such a kind soul, though. You are so genuine and kind-hearted. I could see you doing that.
Yeah. I still remember I was outside. We were outside and I was like, Mom, I need to talk to you. I was like, can we go outside?
That's so funny.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, back on track. So one thing that I've noticed, I'm sure you guys all have noticed. I don't want to say I noticed, I knew, but almost all of these reincarnations we've been talking about have been humans coming back as, humans.
Yeah, like people remembering another person's life, another family, another town, another identity.
But that opens up a really strange question. If reincarnation is real, are humans the only ones involved in it?
Because a lot of spiritual beliefs don't think so at all. Some traditions believe souls can move between human and animal lives, that an animal could once have been human, or that a human soul could return as an animal.
And honestly, when you start looking into stories from pet owners like farmers, animal rescuers, and children, there are some accounts that get really eerie.
Yeah, stories about pets returning to the same family.
Oh, I'm gonna cry.
I know. And animals recognizing people they should never know. Or
there's a whole movie about it, right? It's called A Dog's Purpose, I think.
See, I haven't even been able to watch that because it reminds me of my soulmate Teddy, Tedward Theodore Bear, and I can't go there.
Yeah. Sorry.
He was legit my soulmate, my familiar, whatever you want to call him. Anyways, some children claim they used to be animals, and there are cases where loved one came back with fur or feathers or paws instead of a human face.
And whether those stories are spiritual truth, grief, coping mechanisms, or coincidence, or something we just don't understand yet, some of them are hard to explain away.
So for the next part of tonight's episode, we're stepping into one of the strangest corners of reincarnation stories. It gets crazier, y'all.
It gets crazier.
The idea that the line between human and animal might not be as permanent as we think. So when people talk about reincarnation, one of the first questions that usually comes up is, can a human come back as an animal? Here's my cat again. She keeps coming back every time I talk about this. I feel like, who were you in your past life?
You've got to do like a reading or something.
And then other people think, can animals come back as humans? A lot of that idea comes from Buddhism. There are other religions and cultures as well. But according to many Buddhist teachers, there's actually a huge misunderstanding about reincarnation, what it's supposed to mean. Many people imagine reincarnation like you die, your soul leaves your body, and then it jumps into another body, maybe into another person or a dog or a cow, and the cycle repeats forever. But traditional Buddhist teachings are often far more complicated than that. In Buddhism, there isn't really the idea of a permanent soul traveling from body to body the way many people picture it. In fact, some Buddhist writers specifically reject the idea of a fixed, immortal soul simply moving into another creature after death. Instead, many teachings focus on something called karma. And that is, karma is not fate. Those are two different things. It's a common misunderstanding. So fate suggests your life is completely predetermined, like everything's already decided for you by some outside force. Karma, on the other hand, is more like cause and effect. The basic idea is that every thought or action and choice that you make sends energy outwards and creates consequences that eventually return to you. Good actions tend to create positive outcomes. Harmful actions tend to create suffering. According to Buddhist teachings, people are constantly shaping themselves through the things they think, say, and do. Now, depending on the Buddhist tradition or individual belief, because even in every religion, not every person in a specific religion believes the same thing. Yes, that religion might teach a certain thing, but there are still individual beliefs within there. So some people do interpret reincarnation very literally. They believe the realms described by Buddhist teachings are real places or states of existence that someone can physically be reborn into after death. And those interpretations, harmful actions, and bad karma could potentially lead someone to be reborn as an animal or into lower realm of existence. Which to me, I'm thinking, I feel like an animal would have a better life, man. Freedom. You're out in nature, you're free, you don't have taxes.
You don't have a mortgage to pay.
Right? But other Buddhist teachers interpret these teachings more symbolically. So when older Buddhist stories talk about people being reborn as animals, some believe those stories were never meant to be taken completely literally. Instead, they may have been symbolic lessons about human behavior and states of mind. For example, Buddhism traditionally teaches multiple realms of existence. There's a realm associated with enlightenment and compassion, but there are also realms tied to anger, greed, violence, obsession, selfishness. Some Buddhist interpretations suggest that these realms aren't necessarily physical locations at all. They can also represent mental and emotional states people experience right now during their lives. So when someone acts purely on instinct, aggression, or selfishness and desire, they might be described as living in the animal realm. Like you're acting like an animal. If someone becomes consumed by endless craving, greed, or obsession, they may be described as living among the hungry ghosts. In other words, the teaching may be less about literally becoming an animal after death, and more about the kind of person you become while you're alive. According to these ideas, humans can live in the middle of all these possibilities. They can fall deeper into cruelty, selfishness, and suffering, or slowly move toward wisdom, compassion, and enlightenment, depending on how we live. So you live, you learn, you grow. And I think that's part of why reincarnation remains such a fascinating topic, because underneath all of the stories about past lives and mysterious memories, there's a deeper question. What kind of person are we becoming right now?
Write that down in your journal tonight. What kind of person are you becoming?
Yeah, think about it. Think about if you believe in karma, and think about if how you're living your life right now affects who or what you come back as in the next life, and how that life will work out for you. Maybe you need to change some stuff in your life, bro.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking if that were the case, like for us, I'd say I must have been pretty decent in my past life because I love my life now.
Right.
Obviously, everything people who say they could be better, but it's like I'm not wanting more and more and more. Like I'm just so happy. Like I love my family and like the life we built, and so like I must have been a really good soul last time.
Yeah, my life's really good. I mean, I grew up like really poor, and we didn't really have anything, and everything I ever owned was like given to me by somebody else that had already used it.
Same.
But the thing is,
our adult lives.
Did I ever for 1 second think that I was lacking, or think that I needed something more than what I had? No, because I always felt like I had everything that I needed. I had a happy life with good parents.
I guess that's where we differ. I'm like, my childhood was, I definitely was lacking love. Like appropriate love for sure.
My parents divorced twice. They divorced when I was like 7, remarried, and divorced when I was 8. And so from a very young age, they were separated, but they always had a good relationship with each other, and always worked with each other, and always made sure that our safety and health and happiness came before anything else. So like,
well, that's good.
There was never any like drama, and the way people do nowadays, like hurting the kids to get back at their significant other. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not going to let them see you because I want to make you mad. Well, that only hurts the kid. If there's no actual reason for all of that drama, then stop thinking about yourself and think about your kids and what they need. And I feel like I was really lucky in that my parents were able to do that.
Well, I love that you had that.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Anyway, so one of the strangest reincarnation cases ever investigated came from a small village in Thailand. Because this wasn't a story about a child remembering another human life. It was about a boy who claimed he had once been an animal. The boy's name was Dalawong. From birth, there was already something unusual about him. He suffered from a skin condition called ichthyosis, which caused the lower half of his body to develop thick, dry scales.
Ichthyosis?
ichthyosis. I don't know. But basically, it caused the lower half of his body to develop thick, dry scales that resembled snake skin. Then, when Dalawong was around 3 years old, he began making bizarre statements about another life. According to him, before becoming human, he had once been a python, and before that, he claimed he had lived as a deer that was killed by a hunter. But it was the story about the snake that terrified his family. One day, Dalawong attended a gathering at a neighbor's house where he saw a man named Mr. Hugh for the very first time. Neither Dalawong nor his mom had ever met this man before, but the moment the little boy saw him, he became furious and began trying to grab a stick or hammer to attack him.
Okay, wait. Did you say he was 3? 3 years
Yeah, 3.
old. And there's no way a 3-year-old will just randomly react like this without some past, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
When adults asked why he was so angry, Dalawong answered with something nobody expected. He said Mr. Hugh had killed him in a previous life when he was a snake. Dalawong always described the event in detail. He claimed he had been living in a cave when 2 dogs found him. He fought with the dogs until their owner, Mr. Hugh, came and killed the snake. Then the story became even stranger. Dalawong claimed that after dying, he existed briefly as a spirit-like being. During that time, he watched several men eat the snake's meat, including the man who would later become his father. According to Dalawong, he believed his future father seemed kinder than the others, so he followed him home and eventually entered his mother's body before being reborn. Researchers later investigated the case. A British researcher named Francis Story, working alongside reincarnation researcher Ian Stevenson, traveled to the village to interview the family and Mr. Hugh himself. According to the investigation, Mr. Hugh confirmed the story. He admitted that he had once killed a snake inside a cave after it fought with his dogs. He also confirmed that Dalawong's father had eaten some of the snake meat afterwards. And then came one detail that deeply unsettled the investigators. When Dalawong first met Mr. Hugh, the child touched the man's left shoulder and told him he had once been bitten there by a snake. Mr. Hugh reportedly did have a scar on that exact shoulder from a snake bite years earlier. As Dalawong grew older, his behavior reportedly shifted. At first, he hated Mr. Hugh for killing him, but eventually he forgave him and even began saying that being human was far better than being a snake because life as a snake is hard. Ironically, he later became deeply interested in Buddhism and meditation. According to reports, he stopped harming snakes altogether and became known in his village for using meditation and herbal knowledge to help sick people. Some even viewed him as a kind of local healer. Years later, another reincarnation researcher revisited the case and found that Dalawong's story had remained consistent over time. He still visited the cave where the snake had supposedly died and continued meditating there regularly. Now, obviously, stories like this are difficult for science to explain. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's cultural influence, maybe it's imagination mixed with memory. But cases like Dalawong are fascinating because they push reincarnation stories beyond the usual idea of humans simply returning as humans again. Instead, they raise a much stranger possibility. What if consciousness, whatever it truly is, isn't limited to just one form of life at all?
This super fascinates me. Like the 3-year-old, his reaction to this person he never met before is just insane. And then the story that he comes up with is so detailed. He wouldn't just come up with that out of the blue, you know? And then it turns out Mr. Hugh is able to say, yeah, all of that happened. I killed a snake that was fighting with my dogs inside a cave. That's incredible. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool.
Sorry, I was reading because I remembered a story about a woman who thought that her dog was her reincarnated mom. And how she was thinking this was the case was that she had brought out, I think she said she brought out Scrabble tiles or something. and was like, what are you trying to tell me or whatever? Because I guess a lot of things were going on, and the dog had like tapped on the letters that says I'm mom or something like that, and it was on a talk show. So I was looking up that. I was trying to see if I could find it.
Yeah. If you can find that, like, send me the video link and I can put it on our Facebook page because that's crazy.
Okay. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. So this one is an oldie but a goodie. So it's a very old story. What's really interesting about this story is that it actually goes to court, and you will not believe the ruling of the court. Okay, so one of the strangest reincarnation stories connected to karma comes from Myanmar during the time of British colonial rule, sometime between the 1800s and the mid-1900s. It began in a small town in Seguang region with a wealthy moneylender named Mong Hle. Mong Hle was known as an important and powerful man in the community. He had money, influence, and a comfortable life living with his daughter, Mimi, inside a large family home. Despite his wealth, he had a reputation for being extremely harsh in business. So he was just a jackass drunk on power, is what it is. At some point, Mong Hle loaned 40 kyat? I'm not sure how to say that. Anyways, 40 kyats to a poor farmer named Yuba. Later, when the time came to repay that debt, Yuba insisted he had already paid the money back in full. According to the story, Yuba was telling the truth. He had paid it. But Mong Hle, he was greedy. Little asshole. He accused him of lying and demanded payment a second time. The argument became heated. Finally, in frustration, Mong Hle reportedly made a dramatic oath. He declared that if he truly was demanding repayment twice, then may he be reborn as a buffalo in Yuba's household. So he's like, nuh-uh, you didn't pay this, but in reality, he knew he paid it. He was just a greedy bastard. And he was like, nuh-uh, if I am demanding that you pay this a second time, may I be reborn as a buffalo in your house. Well, despite the farmer's protests, the moneylender, Mong Hle, forced him to pay again. Then, not long afterward, Mong Hle suddenly became very ill and died unexpectedly. Karma's a bitch. Soon after his death, something unusual happened. A buffalo calf was born on Yuba's property. At first, nothing seemed strange about the animal, but over time, Yuba noticed the calf behaved differently from the other buffaloes. It seemed unusually responsive to people and appeared to recognize certain names. Then one day, almost jokingly, Yuba called out to the buffalo using the respectful title he once used for Mong Hle. Saya, saya, come here. To his shock, the buffalo immediately responded and walked towards him. That moment made Yuba remember the oath Mong Hle had spoken before his death, and suddenly the farmer began wondering whether the buffalo might actually be the reincarnated moneylender Mong Hle. News of the strange animal spread quickly through the town. Eventually, Mong Hle's stuck-up daughter, Mimi, heard the rumors, and she was furious. To her, the idea that her wealthy, respected father had supposedly been reborn as a buffalo was humiliating. Well, maybe if your papa wasn't an asshole. Anyways, she believed Yuba was dishonoring her family's name, so she took him to court for defamation. What happened next sounds almost unbelievable. The judge decided to investigate the matter personally. Witnesses from both families were brought into the court, along with the buffalo calf itself. During the hearing, Yuba called out, "Sia, sia!" and the buffalo reportedly walked directly toward him. Then Mimi used the private name she had called her father growing up, Shishi, and the buffalo responded and approached her. Everyone present witnessed the animal reacting correctly to both names. According to the story, the judge concluded that Yuba had not invented the claim and dismissed the case. Now,
I love that.
Now, obviously, whether you believe this story literally is another question entirely. But within Buddhist culture, the story carried a very specific meaning. It was seen as an example of karma, the idea that dishonest or harmful actions can shape what happens after death. In this case, the belief that Meng Hua's greed and unfair treatment of the farmer resulted in him being reborn as an animal. There's something deeply eerie about the image of that courtroom. A rich man spends his life demanding money from others, only to return standing silently before the judge as a buffalo. And,
oh my God.
And the judge ruled in the poor man's favor.
Yeah, I believe it's him. Yeah, cool.
And see, the thing is, I didn't even write this in here, but in the story, it literally says that the judge ruled that, what was his name? Yuba. The judge ruled literally that Yuba did not lie. And he also ruled that this actually was the reincarnation of Mimi's father.
Yeah, so it's a canon event.
So, like, in the story, like, I didn't include all the details because it's a super long story. Anyways, like, the judge actually said, yes, this calf is a reincarnation of somebody. That was a real ruling in a court of law.
Yeah, I love it. I love that.
I do too. I know it was like so long ago, but it's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So obviously these reincarnation stories follow a familiar pattern. Like a child remembers another human life. They recognize people, describe places, or recall events that investigators can later verify. But once in a while, a case appears that doesn't fit neatly into any category at all. One of those cases involved a young American boy named Peter. In the early 2000s, when Peter was around 6 years old, his mother handed him a candy necklace, one of those colorful necklaces made of little sugary candies, and they're shrunk together. They quite literally look like little sugar donuts. I loved them when I was a kid. But, it seemed like a completely ordinary moment. But as Peter looked at the necklace, he suddenly said something that was deeply strange. "When I was a chimpanzee," he told his mother, "a boy threw one in my cage, and I didn't know what to do with it." His mother was stunned, to say the least. Thinking maybe she had misunderstood him, she asked how he had ended up in a cage. Peter calmly explained that he had fallen into a trap and was later taken to a zoo. Curious now, his mother asked another question. She wanted to know what happened after he died as a chimpanzee, but before he was born into the current life. Peter answered with a single word, "Nothing." And that was almost the entire story. Before his mother could ask much more, the rest of the family came home and the conversation ended. Later, when she tried bringing it up again, Peter barely even remembered saying it. The memory seemed to disappear as quickly as it had appeared. He never mentioned being a chimpanzee again. There were no recurring dreams, no strange behaviors, no obsessions with primates. He didn't act unusually animalistic or show any special attachment to chimpanzees afterwards. It was simply one strange moment triggered by a candy necklace. Eventually, the story reached Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia. The same researcher connected to many famous past life memory cases involving children. Dr. Tucker admitted the case was unusual because it lacked many of the details investigators typically look for. Peter couldn't provide names, dates, or locations. There was no way to verify the story historically. But what interested Tucker was the larger implication behind it. Cases like Peter's raise uncomfortable questions about consciousness itself. Is consciousness created entirely by the brain? Or could some part of awareness exist independently from the body? Dr. Tucker pointed out that some researchers studying near-death experiences have asked similar questions after people reported vivid experiences while their brains have appeared inactive or severely impaired. And interestingly, some Buddhist traditions have long taught that consciousness is something more formless, something not permanently tied to one physical body. Now, obviously, Peter's story doesn't prove reincarnation. It could have been imagination or a random childhood thought or a fantasy triggered by an object. But cases like this stay with people because they challenge a very human assumption that consciousness belongs only to us. Because if even a small part of Peter's memory were real, then the line between human and animal awareness might be far thinner than we think. Okay, another random side note. I just remembered something. Another thing that my daughter had said, and I think I've said this before on the podcast as well, but I wanted to bring it up again. One night, she was, I want to say she's in third grade or something, and she wakes up and do the whole normal, how did you sleep? Did you have any dreams? And then she's like, no, I didn't have a dream, but I was on a spaceship last night. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, we were all on a spaceship. We were taken to this jungle planet that had all these animals and primates, but they didn't look like, these, what we know. And we went to a water planet and we went to this and this and this. And I'm like, honey, I think you just had a really vivid dream. And she's like, no, it was not a dream. It was real.
If
and
your daughter jumped on the Doctor Who TARDIS and went on all these adventures without me, I'm going to be real.
Yeah. You know what's funny though? My daughter's 11 now, and sometimes I bring it up, and she was like, well, yeah, I still don't think it was a dream, Mom. It really did not feel like a dream. It was real. Even now, there's none of that, oh, maybe you're right. Maybe it was just a really vivid dream or da-da-da. She's still just Mom, relax. We were abducted, but it was fine. We were just going on a tour. Okay.
That's crazy. I mean, crazy as in interesting.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Well, before we close out tonight's episode, I just want to leave you guys with one super quick final fact that really stuck with me while researching all of this. This quote comes from the completely free book that I think everyone should go get. And the link is in our sources multiple times. The book is Scientific Evidence for Reincarnations, NDEs, which is near-death experiences, and Karma with Personal Stories by the Open Research Consortium. I know that's a big mouthful, but it's free because it's like a research journal from the University of Virginia, from the Open Research Consortium. All of these different doctors that have come together and they're providing this research. Anyways, here's a quote from that, super quick. More than 5,000 children have spoken of past life memories on all continents except Antarctica, obviously. And those cases are documented. We do not know how many cases there are that are not documented and did not become part of a research program. So there could be a lot more. Scientist Ian Stevenson alone, this one scientist alone, had documented more than 2,400 cases. 2,400 cases. And whether you believe reincarnation is real, symbolic, psychological, spiritual, something scientific, whatever, science has not figured it out yet. That is a massive number of stories. No matter what you believe, that is a massive number of stories. And that's only the documented ones. Think of all the ones that have not been documented. I mean, thousands of children Thousands of memories and thousands of families left trying to answer the same impossible question. How could they know these things?
Yeah, how could they know these things? I hope they'll write them down. Maybe one day we'll have even more and better science, and maybe we could actually prove. I know there's people working on it in the deep centers of labs or whatever, but that's a very interesting study. Well, guys, tonight's episode definitely took us down one of the strangest rabbit holes we've explored so far. From children remembering lives they shouldn't know about, to stories of people supposedly returning as animals or were animals in a past life. This topic sits right on that line between fascinating and deeply unsettling.
No matter what side you fall on, I think reincarnation stories leave you with way more questions than answers. Because even if only one of these stories are true, it would completely change how we understand life, death, consciousness, and maybe even what it means to be human.
And, okay, if reincarnation isn't real, then we still have to explain why thousands of children across different countries and cultures keep telling these kinds of stories with such bizarre consistency and accuracy.
Yes, accuracy. Either way, it's enough to make your brain do somersaults, y'all. And as we say in the South, that dog won't hunt. Except in this case. Apparently the dog might have been your uncle in a past life.
After this episode, if my cat stares at me weird, I'm going to start wondering if he used to be somebody's judgmental granddad.
Mine are actually she pays taxes and deserves my life choices.
Like when we're snacking on chips out of the bag straight, they're like,
She just stares at me like, bitch, please.
Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight for another episode of Witchin' and Winin'.
And if you have any strange experiences, paranormal encounters, creepy dreams, ghost stories, possible past life memories, true crime experiences, yep, we've added that, or anything else weird you just can't explain,
you can send them to us on our Reddit page, paranormal_shares, or on our Facebook page, Witchin' and Winin', or email us at witchinandwinin@gmail.com.
And I'm going to give you a hint, y'all. Not this episode. Not the episode before this. But the episode before that one. There's a key word in there. And if you are the first person to email us that key word, you get all of our stickers for free.
Yep, all of the curated stickers just for our podcast. Unique, one-of-a-kind, beautiful
stickers. They are
stickers.
unique and one-of-a-kind because Miranda is an incredible artist. She actually created all of them and designed them and drew them herself.
Indeed, indeed.
She really is a great artist.
Thanks.
Oh, just what was that episode about where we talked about that word?
Because it's like there's more layers. There's more layers.
There's and we're layers. What were the layers about?
I don't remember.
I feel like I need to look. It wasn't haunted theme parks, was it?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that was the last time. Or no.
The last one was like paranormal meets true crime. I think it's a haunted theme parks one. Anyways, just listen to them all and figure it the fuck out. And if you need that email again, it's witchinandwinin@gmail.com.
That's
WITCHNANDWINEN@gmail.com.
Don't forget to like, follow, rate, and review the podcast because it really helps us grow and keeps us able to keep making spooky content for everyone.
And until next time.
Next time, like as in the next show or the next life.
Whichever comes first.
Don't say that!
Why did the guy think he used to be a squirrel in the past life? Because he keeps hiding snacks and forgetting where he put them. How did the man know he was a golden retriever in a past life? Because he gets excited every time somebody says, "Want to go for a ride?" Why does Mom think she was a cat in the past life? Because she loves naps, and somehow she knocks over everything in the house. Why does Dad think he was a lion in the past life? Because he protects his family and roars every time he yawns.